Okay, everyone, we're live now. My name is Rahmat, and I am here with my fellow moderator for today, Miss Uniza Mujib and Miss Fajr Rabia Pasha. We are both representatives of the Youth General Assembly, and the topic for today's webinar is Women in Education, is the level of empowerment that we've achieved enough. So, a little about YGA is why Youth General Assembly is the first youth-led parliamentary initiative in Pakistan's history, playing an effective role in administrative, political, economic, and social processes while honing the leadership skills of youth. Youth General Assembly takes pride in being the parent organization of three youth-led national initiatives, namely the YGA Legal Forum, YGA Business Forum, and YGA Media Forum, which have the privilege of working on diverse activities and engaging youth from different academic and professional backgrounds. Talking about this particular initiative, YGA thinks it's time that we all see gender as a spectrum instead of two sets of opposing ideals. It is our duty to create awareness among all nations to recommend solutions and strive to resolve issues of females in Pakistani society. YGA is giving a platform to females from all professions to come together and talk about their issues. Politicians, lawyers, judges, bureaucrats, and lawmakers will join us in the upcoming webinars. Join us so that you can also be part of the solution and let us together transcend the barriers of inequality in this society. This series will include webinars discussing the gender disparity in education sector, in the employment sector, in politics, as well as in health, the causes of disparity, and why do women lag behind. For this purpose, today we have our guest speaker with us, Ms. Fajr Rabia Pasha. Um, she has done extensive work and in an innovative approach and deep knowledge of challenges faced by women. She's gained recognition for her work in England as well through her Inspired Sisters program. Ms. Fudger set up and led many initiatives in education, entrepreneurship, and employment to help women marginalized community out of poverty. She's actively served on various charity boards in England and remained engaged at policy work level representing the Civil Society Organization and BAME. Ms. Fudger also is the executive director of the Pakistan Alliance for Girls Education page. And Ms. Fudger, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, Ms. Fajr, we'd like to begin by asking you how you've gotten into this work field of work. What inspired you to join this cause? Because if I'm correct, you have been working towards it for a young age. So, what really motivated you to join it? What was your journey like?
I think, yes, right from very young age, I was exposed to this by my parents, by my mother particularly, and and I found it really interesting that we have a lot of issues and problems. And when I look back 20 years back, almost when I started off, and I look at now, I don't see much has changed. Believe it or not, things are pretty much the same when we're talking about perception and women's status in the country. And but what I found really interesting was. That excitement that you have, that when you know that things can be done to change that situation, if it's planned properly, if you're innovative, if you are connecting with people, with connecting with women and communities, then things can be done. And that is something that I think it really inspires me, that if we're not in a situation where there is problem, but there's a solution there as well at the same time. So I've always been the type of person who can find solutions out of any problem, naturally, I guess. And then because I was engaged in this sort of work right from very young age, it gave me a great understanding of the problems women in Pakistan are facing, both in urban areas and rural areas. And I had the opportunity to travel in across Pakistan and meeting a lot of women who are entrepreneurs, a lot of women who are working from home with no opportunity to expand their businesses, no marketing skills, no connectivity globally. So same problems we still have them. It's just sad to think about it. When I think back, when I was a child, and pretty much everything is still the same. But that experience, you see, that learning, uh, something that really defined the pathway for me. Where I then moved to UK, and you wouldn't believe that when I was in UK and I was just there for a week in UK, and I met so many women from Pakistan who were in the same position, in the same place like they were in Pakistan. And you would think, yeah, they've gone to England and things would change for them, but that culture, that mentality, that has, it's like, it's traveled with them to another country. In fact, they would make more effort as communities to hold on to that culture, because they don't want to lose that culture, because if they're in a different country. So it was even more difficult for women in UK. It still is, for women who've actually migrated from Pakistan to UK, not the new generations who are born there and have gone to the education schools in UK. They're different people. Their mindset is different. The women are empowered. The girls in UK now, Pakistani girls, are more empowered than the women who actually migrated to UK back in 80s, 80s and 90s, when a lot of migration took place from Pakistan to UK. So it's just, so when I was there and I saw that, and the first thing I wanted to do was, is because I'd already seen that in Pakistan. The first thing I thought is, like, how can we help them? They have to break away from all this. They lived in very small circles, because given that England is English speaking community, they would not even go onto a public bus, because they'll have to speak to a driver who would be an Englishman, and they wouldn't know how to tell the person where they want to go to and how much money they have to pay for bus. So simple things, basic things like that. That meant that it really restricted their lives. A lot of Pakistani women were also, a large number percentage was also on public benefits, which is a big problem for government of UK, because government is a UK government is a welfare state. So anybody who's not working, they have to give, they have to bear their living costs, their housing costs, their health costs, everything. So minorities, especially women from Muslim background, was seen as a burden, that it's another burden on the state of UK. And so there are multiple things that happened, and multiple things inspired me in terms of to try and change that situation. A lot of women, you wouldn't believe, even and we talk about it regularly in Pakistan even now, like for example, the girls who would go into medical and be a doctor but never practice. So we still have women, in UK, who migrated from Pakistan and highly qualified, but were just never allowed to work, to sort of learn and go to colleges there. They have a lot of adult education programs running in UK. A constant learning process is something very important for the society there. So a lot of things happen, but these women were never allowed to be part of that, and they were pretty much restricted to home. So that's when I sort of got into and got my organization set up, Inspired Sisters. And this is back in 2002, when it started up informally, and then we got it registered, and then it grew, and then it's a long story from there.
So you mentioned how the struggles that women went through in Pakistan, they transcended borders. Like even when they moved outside of Pakistan, the cultural restrictions that they were born with really stuck with them. But you compared it to the first generation immigrants that were then born in the United Kingdom, how they were different. So the connection between education and employability there for women, and then education and employability in Pakistan, how do you think that varies? Is our education working towards creating um, graduates that can step in as skilled workers or laborers, or is there a gap between that? And how did you compare that to the education system in UK?
Okay, so there are gaps in education in UK as well. When we're talking about the education system, I've worked very, very closely with, in the education, especially for adults, for young people, and we've seen a lot of gaps, and there are a lot of issues and problems there as well. But in Pakistan, we have major issues, because, for example, if we talk about just the education sector, which is, if accessible, right? So that's important, if it's accessible for girls and boys. But then there are still a lot of gaps within the education sector itself, because it's not preparing the young people for the outside world, right? So when they step out, they're not prepared. I mean, for example, I run an organization, and when I'm recruiting, I want to recruit young people, right? I want to give them an opportunity, and I in the in for benefit of my organization, and I try and see, okay, so which universities are the best universities of Pakistan, and we try to recruit from there. So you can see, as an employer, I already have a preference. If there's a girl, and we have a lot of young women working in Pakistan Alliance for Girls Education, but if there's a girl who's not coming from a university which is top ranked, right? So we would be more sort of not in favor of that person to start with, right? Which shows that as an employer, you'd already have you're already creating that bias, right? We do that, right? Because we know that the young people who coming from university, even the young people who come from the top universities, even they're not prepared, right? Even they have to be trained a lot in terms of the work environment and how to behave in work environment, how to actually work, practically doing things. So academics is fine on one end, but if the universities and the education is not preparing you for practical life, then there's huge thing missing. Now in England, for example, one of the key thing that happens, is a regular thing, is the personal development programs, personal development initiatives, where that you're taught the communication skills, you taught team work skills, you taught how to actually present a CV, interviews, how do you do, how to go about in interviews. We still have people coming in, to give interviews for our jobs, and people who have already worked, even they're not prepared for interviews. They don't understand how to prepare for interview. So that just shows that how much gap is there. And we've got to keep in mind that you only have, what, 240 universities in Pakistan, right? That's all you have. And so the number of girls who actually make it to university is very small. I don't have the number on top of my fingers, but just keeping in mind that only 1 out of 10 girls in Pakistan complete secondary education, right? So if that is the figure, only looking at 4 to 5% of the girls actually making to universities in Pakistan, out of all the girls in Pakistan, which is a very small figure. And then even those girls are not actually given the opportunity to for that education is just not of that quality that is going to prepare them for the life ahead. And then with girls, it's even more difficult. You see, it's more complicated. If it's a boy, once a boy goes through education system, he goes out. It's a male dominated world anyway, like society. He fits into that sort of system very easily. But when it comes to a girl, what happens that when she comes out, there's workplace harassment, right? You still have issues around equal pay problem, which is a global problem and equally exists in Pakistan. So you have multiple issues, and women tend to be put in those positions where they're expected to prove themselves again and again and again. Even it happens with me, and I have worked in England. I have a solid track record and this and that. But even then, you would have people doubting your skills because you're a woman. It's just simple as that. And that challenge is there, and it gets worse for young girls, unfortunately, you see, because उनको तो वो बिल्कुल ही जो है ना, वो नहीं समझते कि इनको कुछ भी आता होगा. And there's this typical mindset. If you speak to somebody in corporate sector, and I have questioned a lot of corporate sector organization, that they don't have women at senior level, they don't have women on the boards. Why not? Because their simple question is कि वो, if we employ them, then we can employ them at lower level jobs, but we won't employ them at senior level jobs, simply because they'll get married, they want to have a baby tomorrow, and then they want to leave, then they want to do this, and they want to, so they're not very consistent with work. So that perception needs to change. And I think our girls also need to have put that effort in, and sort of showcase that consistency, that no, when they're working, they're serious about work. So it's not about the skill set. Girls are very intelligent. They're more, when we're talking about results, they're more, you find them higher achievers than boys. So the intelligence is there, the skill sets are there. But because girls are obviously then are expected to get married, आपकी यूनिवर्सिटी खत्म हो गई है, तो अब आपके पेरेंट्स आपके ऊपर प्रेशर एक वो क्रिएट करना शुरू कर देंगे कि बस अब शादी का टाइम हो गया है. तो आपको टाइम ही नहीं मिलता है कि आप अपना करियर इस्टेब्लिश कर सकें. अब करियर एक साल में इस्टेब्लिश नहीं होता है. आप, यू मे पिक अप सम एक्सपीरियंस एंड स्टफ, बट यू नो गोइंग टू आपको अपने आप को स्टैब्लिश करने के लिए बहुत टाइम चाहिए, लोगों को कि पता चल सके कि यस यू आर दैट काइंड ऑफ पर्सन हु इज वेरी मच कमिटेड टू देयर वर्क, who want to progress, who want to be a leader in future in your sector, whatever you may be doing. तो ये चीज़ें इस तरह की चैलेंजेस बहुत सारे जो है वो यहाँ पे इंग्लैंड में ये फ़र्क है कि अब जाके वहाँ पे जो अब से कि जो अब जनरेशन वहाँ पे अब जो बड़ी हुई है, अभी भी जब when I was working there, we had a huge problem around forced marriages. Such a big problem in Muslim communities, especially Pakistani communities, Bengali communities. They would bring the girls back to Pakistan without telling them, okay, but we're going on a trip kind of thing, and then they'll bring them back to Pakistan and get them married off to somebody in the family forcefully without, बच्ची को पता भी नहीं है. And these are the kind of things that are allowed in UK, which has led to a lot of honor killings as well in our communities. We are very we have a bad name, unfortunately, when we go to England, that people say that, oh, if you're Pakistani and you're a Pakistani girl, then everybody's perceived in the same way. We've seen that in Bengali communities, that's been a huge problem, that girls will be just taken back and married off, and sometimes just left in the home countries, not to be brought back again. उनके पासपोर्ट्स उनसे ले लिए जाएंगे, मतलब इस तरह की बहुत सारी मुश्किलात. तो ये हमारी कम्युनिटीज़ के बहुत सारे चैलेंजेस वहाँ पे भी रहे, लेकिन अब जाके ये चीज़ें बहुत बेहतर होनी शुरू हो गई, बिकॉज चिल्ड्रन आर मच मोर अवेयर and parents know now that they can't do these kind of things with their children. वो forced marriages वाले पे, and then government of UK has done a lot of work. There's a lot of awareness raising they've done. They have been educating the communities on the law, for example, what the law says, what is allowed, what is not allowed. So a lot of it's been an ongoing process. So you can imagine कि अगर पाकिस्तानी communities भी इंग्लैंड में at least 4-5 decades, 6 decades से वहाँ पे जो reside कर रही हैं, तो वो अब जाके जो cycle है वो break it's broken up, right? It's taken that long.
Really adequately described it all to me. A couple of questions that I have from your shared experience is that you mentioned how personal development programs that work at a school level in the United Kingdom have an impact on launching young people into the practical world really nicely. How can those similar programs be brought to Pakistan? And then you mentioned how the UK government has done a lot of work around awareness in educating communities and minority communities work that live there about the law there, and how the type of mindset that they're coming with, it's not something that's sustainable in the environment that is fostered in the United Kingdom. How can those similar awareness programs and them yield the same result here in Pakistan? How can that shift to Pakistan?
Okay, so first of all, on changing the mindsets, I think they have been very clear about the law, right? So children in the school are educated on their rights, what the law says, what the parents can do, what the parents can't do. वहाँ पे सोशल सिक्योरिटी नेट जो है ना वो बहुत स्ट्रांग है. सो अनफॉर्चुनेटली अनलेस इन पाकिस्तान वी कैन डू दिस थिंग्स एट गवर्नमेंट लेवल, कि आपके सेफ्टी प्रोटेक्शन, आपका जो नेटवर्क है वो ठीक है, कि कहीं बच्चे के साथ ज्यादती हो रही है. जैसे पाकिस्तान में कि बहुत ज़्यादा चाइल्ड अब्यूज़ के केसेस आपको मिलेंगे, सेक्सुअल अब्यूज़ है, डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस है, टॉर्चर है, बहुत सारी चीज़ें जो होती हैं. लेकिन उस पर फ़र्क क्यों नहीं पड़ता, और वो चीज़ें वैसी की वैसी क्यों रहती हैं? बिकॉज द गवर्नमेंट डजंट हैव द कैपेसिटी or a proper governance to implement its laws. The laws are there, right? The laws are maybe much better than England in Pakistan, but the implementation is extremely weak. तो एक तो जब तक वो चीज़ नहीं होगी, तो आप अगर बच्चों को एजुकेट कर देंगे और अवेयरनेस दे देंगे, तो वो बच्चे के साथ अगर फॉर एग्जांपल ज्यादती हो रही है, या कोई भी बच्चा या बच्ची किसी मैरिज में इज बीइंग फोर्स्ड, तो वहां से जाएगा तो कहाँ जाएगा, राइट? उसके पास, क्योंकि देयर इज नो सेफ्टी नेट देयर. अब आप रिलीजन देख लेना, रिलीजन आपको जबरदस्ती की शादी अलाउ करता है ना, आपका लॉ अलाउ करता है, लेकिन ये कल्चर है जिसको हम लोग कहते हैं कि मज़हब का नाम हम दे देते हैं अक्सर औकात की, जी हमारा मज़हब तो ये कहता है, मज़हब वो कहता है, लेकिन मज़हब वो सारा कुछ नहीं कहता है. तो उसके ऊपर बहुत ज़रूरी है कि कम्युनिटीज़ की इंगेजमेंट. इंग्लैंड में भी ऐसे ही होता है, कम्युनिटीज़ आर इंगेज, जो आपकी सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस वर्किंग एट ग्रास रूट लेवल, उनके साथ बहुत ज़्यादा गवर्नमेंट की पार्टनरशिप होती है, बहुत ज़्यादा फंडिंग होती है उन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस को, ताकि वो कम्युनिटी लेवल पे वो चैलेंजेस को एड्रेस कर सकें। तो लॉ एक साइड पे ठीक है, वहाँ पे कहीं कुछ हो जाए तो लॉ कम्स इनटू एक्शन इमीडिएटली, but then at the same time education and awareness goes side by side. Even you'll see in England, you'll see the police would be involved in awareness raising, right? कि आप पुलिस के जहाँ पे भी जो अवेयरनेस सेमिनार्स हो रहे हैं या वॉक्स हो रही हैं या कोई भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन वेरियस डिफरेंट वेज और मीन्स के साथ एजुकेशन कर रही होती है, कम्युनिटीज को इंगेज कर, कॉफी मॉर्निंग्स होती हैं बहुत ज़्यादा, ये चीज़ की ना, for just the communities to come together and talk about these things and understand कि क्या चीज़ ठीक है और क्या चीज़ ठीक नहीं है। तो एक तो ये जो है ना, दिस इज समथिंग दैट वी इन पाकिस्तान नीड टू डू, something that we're trying to do in our organization, that we're engaging with communities in the one that we're working with, so we can educate the communities and make them understand कि बच्चों की तालीम कितनी ज़रूरी है उनकी उनकी बेहतरी के लिए, उनकी फैमिलीज की बेहतरी के लिए। सो दैट्स द काइंड ऑफ मॉडल्स जो है आपका वो करने ज़रूरी हैं, इम्प्लीमेंट करने ज़रूरी हैं। और लॉ गवर्नेंस को इम्प्रूव करने के बगैर कुछ नहीं हो सकता। आपके जो अब्यूज़ केसेस हैं विच आर वेरी हार्ट ब्रेकिंग, कि आपके छोटे छोटे बच्चों के साथ चाइल्ड अब्यूज़ हो जाता है, सेक्सुअल अब्यूज़ होता है, उन चीज़ों को बहुत ज़्यादा वो तकलीफ़देह होती हैं, वो किसी भी कम्युनिटी के लिए भी तकलीफ़देह होती हैं, पेरेंट्स के लिए तकलीफ़देह होती हैं, but we don't see much of an action from the government side, because government, we got to remember, is the key responsible body that has to lead change. चेंज की बात करना बहुत आसान होता है, लेकिन चेंज को एक्चुअली लेकर आना और उसके लिए सही स्ट्रैटेजी को इम्प्लीमेंट करना जो है वो इतना मुश्किल नहीं है, इट्स ईजी। और जहाँ तक आपने पर्सनल डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम्स की बात की, they're very straightforward things. They're nothing rocket science. We're going in a partnership with a UK-based organization, and we're introducing a personal development program here for girls in ninth and 10th grade. But that's just these are set programs. We used to deliver these in in my organization all the time, especially for young people who were getting ready for work. So anybody who was 17-year-old plus, would be on those programs. So they're preparing, ताकि वो एक हफ्ते, 2 हफ्ते की, 3 हफ्ते की workshops, intense workshops होती हैं जो आपको just get you ready for the work life, and how do you deal with people, and citizenship और law क्या कहता है, ये सारी चीज़ें ना। तो ये चीज़ें यहाँ पे भी हो सकती हैं, इसमें कोई वो नहीं है, इतनी कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है, कोई मुश्किल काम नहीं है। Or sometimes I fail to understand why they're not happening. A lot of things have started to happen, लेकिन पाकिस्तान में होता है कि कोई बज़वर्ड क्रिएट हो जाए तो फिर चीज़ें चल पड़ती हैं। तो अगर हम किसी चीज़ का बज़वर्ड क्रिएट कर लेंगे कि everybody wants to do it then and wants to talk about it, then you'll see the donors will be putting money into it. You'll see government is also prioritizing it. But if it's not a buzzword, it's not a trend, तो वो चीज़ें जो है ना फिर रह जाती हैं। एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप इज़ अ ह्यूज एग्जांपल के, और स्टार्टअप इज़ अ बज़वर्ड। तो वो उसमें अनफॉर्चुनेटली ये भी होता है कि एक तरफ से तो इट्स वेरी गुड कि अ लॉट ऑफ यंग पीपल आर मोर अवेयर अबाउट सेटिंग अप बिजनेसेस एटसेट्रा, एंड दे वांट टू डू थिंग्स, बट देयर इज दैट लैक ऑफ एजुकेशन, क्योंकि उनको वो शुरू से स्कूल सिस्टम में तो मिली नहीं है। आप उनको इंगेज नहीं किया गया इन चीज़ों के ऊपर, तो एकदम से यूनिवर्सिटी से निकल के आप लोग बच्चे जो है, young people, I come across so many young people that I meet, that who have great ideas, excellent ideas. They know कि आप अपने local community problems को किस तरह solve करेंगे, लेकिन they don't know how to। तो उसमें फिर बहुत सारे फेलियर्स भी होते हैं। जब वो फेलियर्स होते हैं तो एट यंग, व्हेन यूर यंग, तो फिर आपकी डिसअपॉइंटमेंट भी उस हिसाब से होती है। तो उसके लिए हम एक स्ट्रैटेजी होना बहुत ज़रूरी है, प्लानिंग होनी बहुत ज़रूरी है, ताकि सो यंग पीपल आर सपोर्टेड थ्रू दैट प्रोसेस। So yeah, so I think it
Yes, I
comes
agree.
down to a lot of things that government also needs to take up, and of course, not everything has to be done by the government. People have to contribute. Organizations, corporate sector, employers, everybody has to make that contribution. Again, that जो change का vision होता है ना, that has to come from the government. और जो पॉलिसीज का ठीक होना, दैट हैज टू कम फ्रॉम द गवर्नमेंट। फिर लॉ की इम्प्लीमेंटेशन कम्स फ्रॉम द गवर्नमेंट। अब जैसे हम बच्चों की बात करते हैं ना, अगर वुमेन वर्क प्लेस हरासमेंट को अगर आप देखो, एंड इफ यू लुक एट हाउ मच प्रॉब्लम इज देयर, स्पेशली फॉर यंग गर्ल्स हु कम फ्रॉम स्मॉलर सिटीज, अब आप क्योंकि तालीम पहले से ज़्यादा उन बच्चों को मिल रही है जो स्मॉल सिटीज़ में है, क्योंकि यूनिवर्सिटीज़ का नंबर इंक्रीज हो गया है. Then they want to have an opportunity to for work on in smaller cities where you don't get those opportunities, where you can get decent pay and exposure, and you have dreams. तो when you come to a bigger city, तो वो फिर उन बहुत ज़्यादा जगहों पे जो है आप यू सी के गर्ल्स आर बीइंग हरास्ड वर्क प्लेसमेंट पे. We have heard and seen a lot of stories जहाँ पे unfortunately bosses would be expecting कि what, you do this favor for me and then I can give you promotion, and that's very sad place to be. लेकिन ये चीज़ें तब ठीक होंगी ना कि अगर लॉ तो आपको कहता है कि आप वर्क प्लेस हरासमेंट नहीं कर सकते, पर अगर आप पुलिस के पास चले जाएं और आप रजिस्टर कराएंगे कंप्लेंट, तो देयर इज नथिंग दैट्स गोना हैपन विद इट. तो वो फिर उस वजह से लॉट ऑफ पीपल डोंट इवन गो टू पुलिस, एंड लॉट ऑफ वुमेन पर्टिकुलरली डोंट गो टू द पुलिस स्टेशन, बिकॉज एक वो आपका कल्चरल परसेप्शन भी है कि आप थाने चले गए तो लोग क्या कहेंगे, थाने जाना बुरा समझा जाता है. तो ये आपकी जो है ना, एक मैं समझती हूँ कि एक हमारा जो है ना, एक जनरेशन को बहुत मुश्किल वक्त गुजारना पड़ेगा कि थाने जाना है तो जाएं, टू हेल विद व्हाट पीपल से, बिकॉज इट्स योर लाइफ एट द एंड ऑफ द डे. आप कब तक लोगों के ऊपर आप बैठे रहेंगे कि लोग ये क्या कहेंगे, लोग ये क्या कहेंगे, ऐसे हो जाएगा वैसे हो जाएगा. तो जब तक हम लोग की एक जनरेशन वो बोल्ड स्टेप्स नहीं लेगी, चेंज नहीं आएगा. I think about my daughters and I think, what I don't want them to be in this environment. I need them to be strong. So I will do what I can do in my capacity to change that. But that's what everybody, all the girls who are educated, who are working, they need to be very, very bold and strong, and stand up. तो वो ये जो होता है ना, अपने साथ सिंपथी का वो नहीं होना चाहिए कि ओ मैं लड़की हूँ, मेरे साथ ये हो जाएगा, मैं अकेली हूँ. ये चीज़ें, we can't think about these things. You got to be strong, and stand up.
You're very right, Ms. Fajr, and thank you so much for being so thorough with your answers. I have one last question for you. You've mentioned how civil society organizations and their work at grassroots level for engagement with communities has been a revolutionizing thing for bringing about change. So, could you tell us how the government or any other corporate sector or any other organization that wants to supplement the work or support civil society organizations like yours and ours, how can that be done to bring about this change that we're looking for?
देखिए, इसमें बहुत सिंपल से काम होने की ज़रूरत है. एंड आई वाज एट अ कॉन्फ्रेंस दिस मॉर्निंग एंड आई सेड द सेम थिंग कि अगर आपके पास स्टेक होल्डर्स, यू से कि देयर आर मल्टीपल स्टेक होल्डर्स. एक गवर्नमेंट है, डोनर कम्युनिटीज़ है, कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर है, कम्युनिटीज़ हैं, लोग हैं, सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, इंडिविजुअल्स हैं, राइट. तो आप किस तरह उसको एक चीज़ को ले आते हैं. अब सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जो किसी एक छोटी सी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एक किसी डिस्ट्रिक्ट में काम कर रही है, तहसील में काम कर रही है, उसके पास इतने रिसोर्सेज नहीं होंगे कि वो बड़े बड़े डोनर्स को अप्रोच कर सके और उनकी रिक्वायरमेंट्स फुलफिल कर सके, राइट. और हर डोनर की फाइनेंशियल रिक्वायरमेंट्स होती हैं, आपकी ऑडिटिंग रिक्वायरमेंट्स होंगी, रिपोर्टिंग रिक्वायरमेंट्स होंगी. आपके पास इतने रिसोर्सेज नहीं होते एक छोटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के पास कि वो कॉन्स्टेंटली इंगेज कर सकें, राइट. So we have to understand that we've got to be able to facilitate the communities at grassroots level. And how do we do that? It is simple. Now up to, tech has spread across Pakistan pretty much. So using that, it's just creating those simple platforms where a civil society organization can register as a civil society organization, a donor can register as a donor organization, a corporate sector that wants to spend its CSR funding can register as a CSR donor. Government is there on that platform and you can do matchmaking. Simple, right? It's not rocket science. के अगर let's just say कि I'm a donor and I want to fund education in Thar Parker in Sindh, right? That's my focus area. So I should be able to just look up and search कि उधर कौन कौन सी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ग्रास रूट लेवल पे काम कर रही है, राइट. दैट्स इट्स जस्ट सिंपल डेटा, इट्स नथिंग, कोई उसमें वो बड़ी चीज़ नहीं है. इट्स एक्चुअली नॉट इवन कॉस्टली और आप वो बड़े आराम से जाके देख सकते हैं. या सिंपली आप इसी तरह सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जो एक एक प्लेटफॉर्म पर अगर रजिस्टर करती है तो दे शुड बी एबल टू सर्च कि कौन कौन से डोनर्स हैं जो लेट्स जस्ट से कि अगर मेरी प्रायोरिटी एजुकेशन और गर्ल्स एजुकेशन है तो आई वांट टू बी एबल टू सी कि पाकिस्तान में ऐसे कौन कौन से डोनर्स हैं जो उस चीज़ को फंड करने को तैयार हैं. So I can narrow down my search. I'm not wasting my time resources, financial resources, and I only approach the ones that I know will be interested in working in that sector, right? और इस तरह के बेतहाशा ग्लोबली प्लेटफॉर्म्स हैं, हर कंट्री में आप देखेंगे आपको ये प्लेटफॉर्म्स बेता मिलेंगे, फ्री प्लेटफॉर्म्स होते हैं जो गवर्नमेंट बनाती है, जनरली गवर्नमेंट फैसिलिटेटेड होते हैं। वो इतना मुश्किल काम नहीं है, लेकिन उससे क्या हो जाएगा कि आप देखेंगे कि देयर बी मोर collaboration. Without collaboration we cannot address our problems. Neither Pakistan has the financial resources, the government doesn't have the financial resources to address the problem. Government of Pakistan has been constantly reducing the development budget in Pakistan. तो आपके आपकी ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट पे तो वैसे ही पैसे नहीं जा रहे हैं। आप पाकिस्तान का एजुकेशन का बजट देख लो, तो इट हैज़ कॉन्स्टेंटली एवरी ईयर हैज़ बिन डिक्रीजिंग, हालांकि इंक्रीज होना चाहिए क्योंकि पॉपुलेशन साइज इज ऑल्सो ग्रोइंग, राइट? लेकिन वो चीज़ें नहीं हो रही। आप अभी आई वाज जस्ट लुकिंग एट फिगर्स के अभी इट्स वेल बिलो 2%, विच इज़ नथिंग। नेशनल आपकी जीडीपी के हिसाब से इट्स वेल बिलो 2% जो आपका अभी इस वक्त बजट एजुकेशन पे एलोकेट हुआ है। तो ये चीज़ें दिस आर और इन हालात में जब इतना सख्त इकोनॉमिक क्राइसिस है, we've been through a pandemic and there's a global economic crisis not just in Pakistan। तो उन चीज़ों को किस तरह हम एड्रेस करेंगे, उसी तरह करेंगे कि सब मिलके काम करें, बजाय इसके कि हर कोई अपना अपना काम करना करना चाहता है। ये भी एक बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है कि आप देखेंगे कि ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस इकट्ठा मिलकर नहीं काम करना चाहती। एक होलिस्टिक अप्रोच नहीं है, आप कम्युनिटी डेवलपमेंट को नहीं देखते, रादर आप कहेंगे कि सिर्फ हेल्थ है या न्यूट्रिशन है या एजुकेशन है। नो, देर ऑल इंटरकनेक्टेड। क्योंकि जब आप डेवलपमेंट पे देखते हैं, अगर आप एक यू आर अ गर्ल growing up, you need to eat, you need to have proper nutrition so you can study properly, राइट? अगर आप मैल न्यूट्रिशन होंगे तो आपका एजुकेशन पे फोकस भी नहीं होगा। अगर आपको स्कूल भी मुहैया किया जाएगा लेकिन आपकी न्यूट्रिशनल वैल्यू ठीक नहीं है आपकी बॉडी में, सो दैट्स गोना हैव एन इम्पैक्ट ऑन योर हाइजीन की चीज़ों के बारे में हम बात करते हैं कि सिंपल चीज़ें कि अगर हाइजीन की अंडरस्टैंडिंग नहीं है, सिर्फ हैंड वॉशिंग समथिंग वी टेक फॉर ग्रांटेड कि हम सिटी में रहते हैं, वी नो हाउ इम्पोर्टेंट इज, बट इफ यू गो इनटू कम्युनिटीज यू विल अंडरस्टैंड कि कितना ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम है हाइजीन के ऊपर, लोगों को अंडरस्टैंडिंग नहीं है। तो ये हर चीज़ इज कनेक्टेड, washing not washing your hand means you're gonna also fall sick। Falling sick means कि आपकी हेल्थ सर्विसेज वैसे ही पुअर है, यू कैन डाई, यू कैन बिकम डिसेबल्ड। पोलियो का देखो कितना बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है, अल्लाह का शुक्र है इट्स रिड्यूस्ड इन पाकिस्तान, बट पाकिस्तान इज ओनली वन ऑफ द कंट्रीज इन द वर्ल्ड दैट स्टिल हैज पोलियो केसेस कमिंग।
I'm
तो
sorry to interrupt you right there. I think just this year, Pakistan announced that it's been polio free now. So Pakistan is also no longer has polio
So this
kids.
first year it has happened, right? And why that has happened? Because the international donor community has really focused on it कि ये खत्म हो। लेकिन ये एक constant effort है। अगर एकदम से फोकस हटेगा तो अगले साल आपको फिर केसेस मिल जाएंगे, राइट? सो वी वांट द सिचुएशन टू लुक स्टे लाइक दिस। तो ये लेकिन एक पोलियो के लिए नहीं, हर चीज़ के ऊपर वही वही आपकी स्ट्रैटेजी और अप्रोच इम्प्लीमेंट होनी चाहिए कि हाउ डू यू रियली टेक एवरीथिंग सो सीरियसली एंड डिजीजेस फिनिश, आपकी, ताकि एजुकेशन के आपके इंडिकेटर्स बेहतर हों, अचीवमेंट के इंडिकेटर्स आपके आपकी एजुकेशन में अचीवमेंट का एक और प्रॉब्लम है। हम एक तो एक्सेस की बात करते हैं लेकिन अचीवमेंट्स का भी बहुत ज़्यादा, क्वालिटी ऑफ एजुकेशन इज सो लो क्या वी नो दैट ओनली 1 out of 5 children can read and write before by the time they complete primary education। 75% learning poverty we have in Pakistan according to World Bank, and which are very much the right figures, क्योंकि बहुत सारे बच्चे जो स्कूल जा भी रहे हैं, बच्चे स्कूल जा रही हैं, they're not actually getting an education in the way it needs to be, because the quality of education is so poor, the quality of teachers is so poor, teachers के ऊपर कोई focus नहीं है, कोई management नहीं है, monitoring नहीं है, उनकी ट्रेनिंग्स नहीं होती हैं, लॉट ऑफ इसमें हर लेवल पे इतना ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम है कि जब तक आप कम्युनिटी डेवलपमेंट को एज अ होल नहीं देखेंगे। क्लाइमेट चेंज की हम बात करते हैं, वी नो कि इट्स वन ऑफ द बिगेस्ट कंसर्न वी द वर्ल्ड हैज़ व्हेन वी टॉकिंग अबाउट क्लाइमेट चेंज। तो ये किस तरह चीज़ें ठीक होंगी? वो इसी तरह होंगी कि जब आप उसको कम्युनिटी लेवल्स पे ले जाएंगे चीज़ों को और उनको एड्रेस करेंगे।
Thank you so much for being here with us today, Ms. Fajr. You've been extremely thorough with all of your answers. You were right how we as a government need to prioritize where we want our spending to go. There needs to be collaboration, there needs to be a freer exchange of information so that all these organizations that are working for these causes, they are facilitated to the best of the government's ability. So you're very right about that, Ms. Fajr, and whatever you've shared with us today has been extremely helpful and insightful. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I hope it was useful.
It was very useful. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Love is.
Allah Hafiz.
Love is.